This is HOA Karma Files, and the HOA made a mistake. You need to remove that film right now, or I am filing a formal violation tonight. I looked up from my dinner plate. Cynthia Anderson stood on my front step in her scarlet blazer, clipboard already out, phone camera aimed at my living room window. The reflective film I had installed 2 weeks earlier bounced the late afternoon sun across the driveway in a bright stripe. I wiped my mouth. I have 15 minutes before I leave for work. What is the problem? She jabbed a finger at the window. That film is in direct violation of architectural standards. The glare is unacceptable and the reflective coating is not approved. I need it removed by tomorrow or you will face fines starting at $250 per day. I stepped outside in my neon green jacket, letting the door close behind me. I pulled out my phone and opened the Pinebrook Estates HOA Standards PDF. Section 12.4 says window treatments must not obstruct visibility from the street or create safety hazards. My film does not block visibility. It is a light reflective tint for UV protection. Cynthia scrolled on her phone, then turned the screen toward me. The notice she had drafted quoted the guideline as prohibiting any reflective surface that alters the exterior appearance. I read it twice. That was not what the PDF said. I swiped to the actual section and held my phone next to hers. You misquoted it. The standard says obstruct visibility. Reflective tint is common in San Antonio. Half the houses on this street have it. She pulled her phone back. It is in the standards. I do not care about excuses. The compliance committee reviewed your installation this afternoon and determined it violates architectural harmony. You have 24 hours. I took a breath. I work in IT support with a strict schedule. I cannot just rip off film I paid a contractor to install without seeing the actual violation. I need the board to show me where it says reflective film is banned. Cynthia tapped her clipboard. The committee meets Thursday. You can appeal then. Until that hearing, the notice stands and the clock is running. She turned and walked back to her car. I saw the portable printer in her trunk bright pink case propped open, spitting out a violation notice with my address at the top. I went inside and missed the first 10 minutes of my shift start time pulling up emails. 2 weeks earlier, I had submitted a work request to the HOA management company, asking if reflective film required approval. The reply from the property manager said window treatments are owner decision as long as they do not obstruct visibility or create safety hazards. I forwarded that email to Cynthia with a short message. You approved this type of film 2 weeks ago. Her reply came back in under a minute. That is confidential. End of discussion. I stared at the screen. Confidential. My own approval email was confidential. I clocked in late for my IT support shift and spent the first hour on back-to-back tickets while my phone buzzed with texts from my neighbor Luis. He lived 4 houses down and had helped me measure the windows before installation. His message included a photo. Cynthia is taking pictures of your house from the street. She has a tape measure. I called Luis during my break. What is she measuring? He laughed, but it was not a happy sound. She measured the angle of the sun reflecting off your window. She is claiming the glare hits her property line. I have it on video if you need it. I wanted to stop renting and build equity, and I thought the standards would protect me. Instead, I moved into a suburban HOA where exterior appearance rules feel endless and the rules change depending on who she dislikes. Pinebrook Estates HOA has 200 homes, and Cynthia Anderson is the compliance committee lead. Every month, someone gets a notice for something new. Last month, it was a mailbox post color. The month before, a neighbor was cited for parking his work truck in his own driveway overnight. I thanked Luis and hung up. My ability to keep insurance costs stable before my next paycheck depended on not getting fined. I had just paid the contractor $900 for the film installation. A $250 per day fine would drain my emergency fund in 3 days. The next morning, I woke up to another email. Cynthia had forwarded the violation notice to the entire board and copied the HOA attorney. The subject line read urgent compliance issue, and the body included photos of my windows taken from 3 angles. One photo showed the glare stripe crossing the street. Another zoomed in on the film edge near the window frame. The third was a shot of my house number with a red circle drawn around the window. I replied to the thread with the management company approval email attached. I also quoted section 12.4 word for word. No response. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number, San Antonio area code. I answered. This is Jennifer calling from the HOA management office. We received your email. I need to let you know that approval for window treatments falls under architectural review, and that process was not completed for reflective film. I sat up. Your property manager told me 2 weeks ago that window treatments are owner decision unless they obstruct visibility. I have the email. Jennifer paused. That was an error. Reflective film requires committee approval because it alters the exterior appearance. You will need to submit a formal application and wait for the next review cycle. When is the next cycle? 4 to 6 weeks. I have a violation notice that says I need to remove the film in 24 hours or pay fines. How am I supposed to wait 6 weeks for approval when the committee already rejected it? Another pause. You can appeal at Thursday's hearing. I recommend you prepare documentation. I hung up and opened my laptop. I pulled the standards PDF, the email thread with management, and screenshots of the violation notice. Then I checked my doorbell camera. The footage from the evening Cynthia knocked showed her arriving, knocking, and filming my windows before I even opened the door. The timestamp was clear. She had decided I was in violation before speaking to me. Wednesday afternoon, a certified letter arrived. It was a formal demand for immediate removal of the film, signed by Cynthia and countersigned by 2 other board members. The letter claimed I had installed unauthorized exterior modifications without architectural approval, and that the reflective surface created a nuisance glare affecting neighboring properties. It also included a new threat. If I did not remove the film by Friday, the matter would be forwarded to collections, and I would be responsible for all legal fees in addition to daily fines. I texted Luis. They are threatening collections. Do you know anyone who has fought this and won? He replied with a name, Marcus Chen. He fought a deck railing height violation last year and got it overturned. He might show up to your hearing if you ask. He hates Cynthia. I messaged Marcus through the neighborhood Facebook group. He called me 20 minutes later. I will testify. I have emails showing Cynthia approved my railing design and then cited me 3 months later, claiming it was never approved. She does this to anyone she does not like. Bring your emails and any proof the board changed the story. Thursday arrived. The compliance committee meeting was scheduled for 7 in the evening at the community clubhouse. I got off my IT shift at 6 and drove straight over. The parking lot was full. Apparently half the neighborhood wanted to watch. Inside, the clubhouse conference room had a long table at the front. Cynthia sat in the center with 2 other board members flanking her. She had her clipboard, her phone, and the bright pink printer case sitting on the table like a trophy. I took a seat in the second row. Luis sat beside me. Marcus sat 1 row back. Cynthia called the meeting to order and read through 2 other violations first. A woman in the front row was cited for a garden gnome exceeding 12 inches in height. A man in the back was cited for parking his truck in the driveway past 10 at night. Both were given 10 days to comply. Neither argued. Then Cynthia looked at me. Next item. Unapproved reflective window film creating nuisance glare and violating architectural harmony. She picked up a printed photo. This image was taken at 4 in the afternoon. The glare from the window is visible across the street and reflects onto the property at the corner. This is unacceptable. I stood. I submitted a work request 2 weeks before installation. The property manager replied that window treatments are owner decision as long as they do not obstruct visibility. I have the email. Cynthia did not look up. That is confidential. End of discussion. I pulled out my phone and opened the email thread. It is not confidential. It is my approval. I am forwarding it to the board right now. I hit send. The email went to the entire board distribution list. Cynthia's phone buzzed. So did the phones of the 2 board members beside her. One of them, a man named Greg, opened the email and read it. He frowned. Cynthia, this says management approved window treatments that do not obstruct visibility. Does his film obstruct visibility? Cynthia tapped her clipboard. The approval process was incomplete. Reflective film requires architectural committee review. That step was not followed. I stayed standing. Section 12.4 of the standard says window treatments must not obstruct visibility from the street or create safety hazards. It does not say reflective film requires review. You added that requirement after I installed the film. Greg looked at the other board member, a woman named Sandra. Sandra pulled up the standards on her tablet and scrolled. She read aloud. Window treatments must not obstruct visibility from the street or create safety hazards. It does not mention reflective film specifically. Cynthia leaned forward. The committee has discretion to interpret harmony and aesthetic standards. Reflective film alters the exterior appearance and creates glare. That falls under harmony. Marcus stood up in the back. I fought a similar issue last year. Cynthia approved my deck railing and then cited me 3 months later. The board overturned it when I showed them her approval email. This is the same pattern. Cynthia's face flushed. That case is not relevant. Marcus walked forward. It is completely relevant. You move the goalposts on what counts as compliance depending on who you want to target. I have the emails. I can forward them to the board right now. Greg held up a hand. Let me see the standards section again. Sandra, can you pull up the architectural review process? Sandra scrolled. Architectural review applies to exterior structural changes, paint colors, roof materials, and fencing. Window treatments are listed under owner discretion unless they obstruct visibility or create a safety hazard. I jumped in. My film does not obstruct visibility. You can see through the windows from the street. The only issue is the glare, and glare is not mentioned anywhere in the standards as a violation. Cynthia's voice rose. The glare is a nuisance. It affects neighboring properties. That falls under general nuisance provisions. Greg looked at her. Which section? Cynthia flipped through her clipboard. Section 18.2. Residents must not create conditions that unreasonably interfere with the use and enjoyment of neighboring properties. I pulled up the PDF on my phone. Section 18.2 is about noise, odor, and smoke. It does not mention light or glare. Sandra read her tablet. He is right. 18.2 lists noise, odor, smoke, and livestock. No mention of light. Cynthia slammed her clipboard on the table. The committee has the authority to interpret nuisance broadly. If the board does not support enforcement, then we have no standards at all. Luis stood. I live 4 houses down. I do not see any glare from his windows. I have video from yesterday showing the sun angle. The reflection does not even reach the corner property. Cynthia pointed at him. You are not a party to this case. Greg looked at me. Do you have any other evidence? I nodded. I have doorbell camera footage from the evening Cynthia delivered the first notice. The timestamp shows she was filming my windows and taking measurements before she even knocked. She decided I was in violation before talking to me. I pulled up the footage on my phone and held it so Greg and Sandra could see. The video showed Cynthia walking up my driveway, stopping in front of the window, raising her phone to take photos, then knocking. The timestamp was clear. Sandra leaned back. That does not look like an inspection triggered by a complaint. That looks like she was looking for a violation. Cynthia stood. I received a complaint from a neighbor about glare. I documented it. I kept my voice level. Which neighbor? Cynthia did not answer. Greg looked at her. Cynthia, which neighbor filed the complaint? She hesitated. That is confidential. Greg shook his head. If you are basing a violation on a neighbor complaint, we need to know who complained. Otherwise, it looks like selective enforcement. Cynthia sat back down. She did not answer. Sandra spoke quietly. I moved to table this violation pending a full review of the complaint and the standards interpretation. We need to determine if reflective film actually requires approval and whether glare constitutes a nuisance under our current rules. Greg nodded. I second. Cynthia's voice was tight. This is a clear violation. If we table it, we set a precedent that owners can ignore committee authority. Sandra looked at her. If we enforce a rule that is not in the standards, we set a precedent that the committee can make up rules on the spot. I would rather table it. The vote was 2-1. The violation was tabled pending review. I sat down. My hands were shaking. The attorney call is in 1 hour. I had 1 hour to figure out if Cynthia would escalate further. The meeting ended. Cynthia packed her clipboard and the pink printer case and left without looking at anyone. Luis and Marcus walked out with me. Marcus clapped my shoulder. She will escalate. She always does. Watch your mail. The next morning, I got an email from the HOA attorney. The subject line was compliance review, and the message requested that I call to discuss the status of the window film violation. I called during my lunch break. The attorney introduced himself as David. He sounded calm. I understand the board tabled your violation. However, the management company forwarded the original complaint and we need to determine next steps. Can you walk me through what happened? I explained the approval email, the misquoted standard, the doorbell footage, and the hearing. I also mentioned that Cynthia refused to identify the neighbor who supposedly complained about glare. David was quiet for a moment. Do you have the approval email from management? Yes. I can forward it. Please do. I also need a copy of the standards section and any documentation showing the committee changed the interpretation after your installation. I sent everything while we were still on the call. David reviewed it in real time. After a minute, he spoke again. This is not a strong case for the HOA. The approval email is clear, and the standards do not specifically address reflective film. If the board proceeds with enforcement, you would have grounds to challenge it. What happens now? I will recommend the board formally clarify the standards before pursuing this further. In the meantime, the violation is tabled and no fines will accrue. I thanked him and hung up. It felt like a win, but I knew Cynthia would not let it go. That afternoon, a neighbor I barely knew, a woman named Rachel, knocked on my door. She was holding her phone. I need to show you something. She pulled up a private Facebook group I had not seen before. It was called Pine Brook Estates Compliance Watch. The group had 60 members. The top post was a photo of my house with a caption. Reflective film glare is out of control on Maple Court. Board refuses to enforce standards. Residents need to document violations and demand accountability. The post had 15 comments. Most of them echoed Cynthia's talking points about harmony and nuisance. 3 people said they were filing their own complaints. One person posted a photo of my driveway with my car visible and a comment. Owner works nights and parks in driveway during the day. Possible commercial vehicle storage. Rachel looked at me. Cynthia runs this group. She is trying to build a case with multiple complaints, so the board has to act. She does this every time someone pushes back. I screenshotted the group posts. Do you mind if I save these? Go ahead. I am only in the group because I wanted to see what she was saying about people. She tried to cite me for a garden hose left on my driveway last year. I ignored the notice and she dropped it after 2 weeks. I thanked Rachel and went inside. A neighbor keeps filming and posting. That was the side complication I did not need. If Cynthia could rally enough people to complain, the board might reverse the tabling and reinstate the violation. I called Marcus. He answered on the second ring. They are building a social media campaign. I need to know if the board will fold under pressure. Marcus laughed. Greg and Sandra will not fold. They tabled it because Cynthia overreached. But you need to get ahead of this. Forward the Facebook post to the board and show them what she is doing. If they see her coordinating complaints, it will undermine her credibility. I forwarded the screenshots to the board with a short message. Cynthia is using a private Facebook group to coordinate complaints against my property. This is not organic neighbor concern. This is retaliation for challenging the violation. Greg replied within an hour. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We will address it at the next board meeting. Sunday afternoon, Cynthia showed up at my house again. She had the pink printer case and a clipboard. I opened the door before she could knock. She did not waste time. The board may have tabled your violation, but I am filing a new complaint. Your driveway has oil stains and your garbage bins are visible from the street. Both are violations. You have 7 days to power wash the driveway and move the bins to the side yard. I looked at the driveway. There was one small oil spot near the garage. The bins were tucked against the fence, barely visible unless you stood at a specific angle. I kept my voice calm. You are retaliating because I challenged the window film violation. Cynthia held up her phone. I have photos. This is a legitimate complaint. It is in the standards. I do not care about excuses. I stepped outside. Show me the standard. She scrolled and turned her phone toward me. Section 9.6. Driveways must be maintained in clean condition, free of stains. Garbage bins must be stored out of view except on collection days. I pulled up the PDF. Section 9.6 says driveways must be maintained in reasonable condition and bins must not be left at the curb except on collection days. It does not say free of stains or out of view. Cynthia did not blink. Reasonable condition means free of stains. Out of view means not visible from the street. I shook my head. You are adding language that is not there. She turned and walked back to her car. The notice is in the mail. You have 7 days. I went inside and called the HOA attorney. David answered. I explained the new complaints. He sighed. She is retaliating. Document everything. Take photos of your driveway and bins with timestamps. If she files formal violations, I will recommend the board dismiss them as retaliatory. I took photos. I also checked the doorbell camera. Cynthia had spent 10 minutes walking around my property taking photos from different angles before knocking. She was hunting for violations. That night, I got a message from Luis. Marcus found something. Check your email. I opened my inbox. Marcus had forwarded a thread from 8 months earlier. The subject line was Board Meeting Minutes March. I scrolled to the compliance section. There was a paragraph about a window film complaint on a different street. The minutes noted that the complaint was reviewed and dismissed because reflective film is not specifically prohibited under current standards. The board voted to add reflective film to the architectural review requirements in the next standards revision. I read it 3 times. The minutes show they decided before hearing me. The board had already determined 8 months ago that reflective film was not prohibited under current rules. Cynthia knew that when she filed my violation. She ignored the board's prior decision and filed the notice anyway. I forwarded the minutes to David with a message. The board dismissed a reflective film complaint 8 months ago and decided the standards do not prohibit it. Cynthia filed my violation knowing it would not hold up. David replied immediately. This is exactly what I needed. I will bring this to the board. If Cynthia knowingly filed a baseless violation, the board may remove her from the compliance committee. The next board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. I did not plan to attend, but Greg emailed me Wednesday night asking me to be there. He said the board was voting on a motion to clarify the standards and address compliance committee procedures. I arrived early. The clubhouse was packed again. Cynthia sat at the front table with her clipboard and the pink printer case. She did not look at me. Greg called the meeting to order. First item. Clarification of window treatment standards. Based on prior board decisions and the current language in Section 12.4, reflective window film does not require architectural review unless it obstructs visibility or creates a safety hazard. The board will add specific language to the next standards revision to make this clear. In the meantime, any pending violations related to reflective film are dismissed. Sandra nodded. I moved to adopt. Greg looked at Cynthia. Do you have any objection? Cynthia's voice was flat. The committee has the authority to interpret harmony. If the board undermines that authority, compliance will collapse. Greg shook his head. The committee has the authority to enforce the standards as written, not to create new rules. The board voted 8 months ago that reflective film is not prohibited. You knew that when you filed this violation. Cynthia did not respond. Greg continued. Second item. Compliance committee procedures. Going forward, all violation notices must include the specific standard section being violated and must be reviewed by the board before formal enforcement begins. The committee may not issue fines or refer violations to collections without board approval. Sandra moved to adopt. The vote was 2-1. Cynthia voted against. Greg looked at me. Your violation is dismissed. All fees and fines are waived. You do not need to take any action regarding the window film. I stood. Thank you. Cynthia stood as well. She grabbed the pink printer case and walked out. The room was silent. After the meeting, Marcus caught up with me in the parking lot. You won. She will probably resign from the committee within a month. She cannot operate without unilateral authority. I drove home. The reflective film was still on my windows. The glare stripe still crossed the driveway in the afternoon sun. Nothing had changed except I no longer had to worry about fines. The next morning, I got an email from David. He confirmed the board had voted to dismiss the violation and that all fines were waived, with fees refunded. He also noted that the board had sent a formal letter to Cynthia reminding her that compliance enforcement must follow the standards as written, and that retaliation against homeowners who appeal is prohibited. I replied thanking him. Then I checked the Pinebrook Estates Compliance Watch Facebook group. The group was gone. Either Cynthia had deleted it or Facebook had removed it. Either way, the posts were gone. Luis texted, "Did you see the group disappeared?" I replied, "Saw it. Good riddance." He sent a laughing emoji. Cynthia is done. Sandra told me off the record that Cynthia submitted her resignation this morning. She is staying on the board but stepping down from the compliance committee. I sat back. It was over. That weekend, I ran into Rachel at the grocery store. She smiled. "I heard you won. Congratulations." I thanked her. She lowered her voice. "You know, half the neighborhood is talking about getting the standards rewritten. People are tired of selective enforcement. Your case was the tipping point." I did not know what to say to that. I just wanted to keep my film and avoid fines. But if it helped other people push back, that was fine with me. Monday morning, I got a final email from Greg. The board has scheduled a standards review committee for next month. We are inviting homeowners to submit feedback on sections that need clarification. If you have suggestions, please send them. I drafted a short reply. I suggested adding clear definitions for obstruct visibility, safety hazard, and nuisance, so future committees could not interpret them however they wanted. I also suggested requiring the committee to provide photographic evidence and site-specific standard sections in all violation notices. Greg replied, "All good suggestions. We will include them in the review." I went back to work. My IT support tickets piled up as usual. The reflective film kept the afternoon sun from turning my living room into an oven. My cooling costs dropped. My furniture stopped fading. The equity I wanted to build was still there. 3 weeks later, I got a check in the mail from the HOA. It was a refund for the violation notice processing fee I had paid when I filed my appeal. The amount was $50. It was not much, but it felt like a closing statement. I deposited the check and deleted the email thread with Cynthia. I kept the doorbell footage and the approval email in a folder labeled HOA just in case, but I did not think I would need them again. A month after that, the board sent out the revised standards draft. Section 12.4 now included a sentence. Reflective window film and tinting are permitted provided they do not obstruct visibility from the street or create a safety hazard such as blinding glare that impairs drivers or pedestrians. Aesthetic preference is not grounds for a violation. I voted to approve the revision. So did 140 other homeowners. The revision passed. Cynthia stayed on the board but stopped attending meetings. Sandra took over as compliance committee lead. The first thing she did was post the violation process flowchart on the HOA website so everyone could see the steps. The second thing she did was require all complaints to be submitted in writing with photo evidence and a specific standard citation. The days of Cynthia walking around with the pink printer case issuing violations on the spot were over. I kept working my IT shifts. I kept my film. The house stayed cool. The equity kept building. One evening, about 2 months after the final board vote, I was pulling into my driveway after work when I saw Cynthia walking down the street. She was wearing the scarlet blazer. No clipboard. No pink printer case. She did not look at me. I parked and went inside. The sun was setting and the reflective film caught the last light, throwing a soft orange glow across the front yard. I stood at the window and watched the glare fade as the sun dipped below the roofline. It was quiet. The HOA was quiet. The neighborhood was quiet. I made dinner and checked my email. There was a message from the board. The subject line was annual meeting notice. The body text reminded homeowners that board elections were coming up in 3 months and encouraged participation. I deleted the email. I had no interest in running for the board. I just wanted to live in my house, keep my film, and not get hassled. A week later, Luis knocked on my door. He was holding a folder. I thought you might want this. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of the Pinebrook Estates Compliance Watch posts from before the group was deleted. Rachel had saved screenshots and printed them. There were photos of my house, my driveway, my car. There were comments calling for enforcement and complaints about board inaction. At the bottom was a post from Cynthia. Reflective film sets a bad precedent. If we allow one violation, we allow all violations. The committee must hold the line. I handed the folder back. Why are you giving me this? Louise shrugged. In case she tries again. You have proof she coordinated the complaints. That is retaliation. If she ever comes after you again, you can show the board she has a pattern. I took the folder. Thanks. He left. I filed the folder with the doorbell footage and the email thread. I hoped I would never need it, but I was not taking chances. The standards revision went into effect the following month. The board sent an email blast announcing the changes and posted the updated PDF on the website. Section 12.4 was highlighted. A note at the bottom said homeowners with existing reflective film did not need to take any action. I printed a copy of the updated section and taped it to the inside of my garage door. Just in case. 3 months later, the annual meeting happened. I did not attend, but Luis did. He texted me afterward. Cynthia did not run for re-election. Sandra is the new compliance lead, and Greg is staying as board president. 2 new members were elected. Both of them campaigned on transparency and clear standards. I replied, "Good." The neighborhood settled. Violation notices dropped. The Facebook drama disappeared. People started talking to each other again instead of filing complaints. I ran into Marcus at the hardware store one Saturday. He was buying deck stain. He saw me and grinned. I heard your case became the example in the new standards training. Every committee member has to review it before they can issue violations. I laughed. Seriously. Sandra made it required. She said if people see what happens when you overreach, they will think twice before filing baseless complaints. That felt surreal. My fight over window film was now a training case. Marcus clapped my shoulder. You did the neighborhood a favor. Cynthia needed to be checked. You checked her. I thanked him and left. I did not feel like a hero. I just felt like someone who had kept his film and his money. That night, I was sitting on my front porch when a car pulled up. A couple I did not recognize got out and walked over. The man spoke first. We just moved in 2 streets over. We heard you fought the HOA over window film and won. We are thinking about installing film. Do you mind if we ask a few questions? I told them everything. The approval process, the standards section, the hearing, the attorney call. I showed them the updated PDF on my phone. I gave them David's contact info in case they needed legal advice. They thanked me and left. I sat back down. The reflective film on my windows caught the streetlight and glowed softly. The glare was gone. The house was cool. The equity was building. I thought about the bright pink printer case and the clipboard and the misquoted standards. I thought about Cynthia standing on my driveway saying it is in the standards. I do not care about excuses. I thought about her saying that it is confidential. End of discussion. And I thought about forwarding the receipts to the entire board so nobody could deny it. That was the trump card. The doorbell camera footage with original headers intact. The approval email with timestamps. The board minutes showing they had already decided reflective film was allowed. All of it together, sent to everyone, impossible to ignore. Cynthia had moved the goalposts, but I had moved them back. If you have ever dealt with an HOA that enforces rules selectively, hit subscribe for more stories like this. The revised standards held. No new violations came. The compliance committee operated transparently. Homeowners knew what the rules were and how to challenge them. I kept the folder with the screenshots and the footage. I kept the email thread. I kept the PDF with the highlighted section. I never needed them again, but I kept them. 1 year after the violation was dismissed, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the HOA. I opened it expecting another rule change or fee notice. Instead, it was a thank you card signed by Sandra and Greg. The text said thank you for holding the board accountable and helping us improve our standards process. Your case made Pinebrook Estates a better community. I put the card on my fridge. It stayed there for a month before I filed it with the rest of the HOA paperwork. I never saw Cynthia with the pink printer case again. I saw her at the grocery store once. She did not acknowledge me. I did not acknowledge her. The film stayed. The glare stayed. The house stayed cool. The fines were waived with all fees refunded. That was the outcome. That was the end. 2 years later, I was sitting on the porch again when a news van pulled up. A reporter got out and asked if I was the homeowner who fought the Pinebrook Estates HOA over window film. I said yes. She asked if I would be willing to talk on camera about HOA overreach and homeowner rights. I said no. She thanked me and left. I went inside. I did not need to be on the news. I did not need to be a spokesperson. I just needed my film and my house and my equity. The neighborhood stayed quiet. The standards stayed clear. The compliance committee stayed accountable. I worked my IT shifts. I paid my mortgage. I watched the equity build month by month. The reflective film did its job. The cooling costs stayed low. The furniture stayed protected. The glare stayed manageable. Nobody complained. Nobody filed violations. Nobody knocked on my door with a clipboard. It was over. Years passed. The board turned over. Sandra and Greg eventually stepped down. New members came in. The standards were reviewed and updated again. Section 12.4 stayed the same. I stayed in the house. The film stayed on the windows. The equity kept building. One evening, I was walking the dog when a younger couple stopped me. They lived across the street. The woman spoke. "We just got a violation notice for our fence color. We heard you fought a violation a few years ago. Do you have any advice?" I told them to document everything, cite the standards exactly, and do not let the committee add language that is not there. I told them to get the attorney involved early if the board would not listen. I told them to keep every email and every photo. They thanked me. A month later, they told me the violation was dismissed. The fence color was allowed under the standards. The committee had misread the section. I was glad. The pattern was broken. People knew how to push back now. The neighborhood learned. The HOA learned. The compliance process worked the way it was supposed to. I kept walking the dog. I kept working my shifts. I kept living in my house. The film stayed. The glare stayed. The cooling costs stayed low. The fines stayed waived. That was the end. I refinanced the mortgage 5 years after the violation. The equity had grown enough to drop the interest rate. The appraiser noted the reflective film as an energy-efficient upgrade. It added value. I smiled when I read the appraisal report. The film Cynthia wanted removed had increased my home value. The neighborhood stayed stable. Property values rose. People moved in and out. The HOA kept operating. The compliance committee kept enforcing the standards as written. I stayed. The film stayed. The house stayed cool. No more violations. No more complaints. No more clipboard. No more pink printer case. It was quiet. It was over. 10 years later, I still live in the same house. The reflective film is still on the windows. The cooling costs are still low. The equity is still building. The Pinebrook Estates HOA still exists. The standards are still enforced. The compliance committee still operates. But it operates fairly now. Transparently. Accountably. I never ran for the board. I never filed another appeal. I never needed to. I just lived in my house, worked my job, and enjoyed the fact that the film I fought for was still doing its job. The glare still crosses the driveway on sunny afternoons. Nobody complains. The standards still say reflective film is allowed. Cynthia moved out of Pinebrook Estates 7 years ago. I heard she joined another HOA board in a different neighborhood. I do not know if she still carries the pink printer case. I do not think about her much. I think about the equity. I think about the cool house in the Texas heat. I think about the standards that protect me now instead of being used against me. I wanted to stop renting and build equity, and I thought the standards would protect me. Eventually, they did. That is the story. That is what happened. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate you being here.